Imagine spending 6 years of your life becoming an expert at failing, not falling apart, not giving up, just failing on purpose, one carefully calculated 74% at a time. Imagine doing it so well that your own parents never once suspected. Now imagine a stranger in an orange blazer moving into your house, determined to fix you, and accidentally undoing every lie you'd ever told to protect yourself. This is the story of a girl who spent years disappearing on purpose, and the world's most incompetent motivational coach who taught her, without meaning to, how to finally be seen. By the time I turned 18, I had perfected something no school, university, or self-help guru had ever thought to teach. The art of being just bad enough. Not catastrophically bad. Not needs professional intervention bad. Just disappointingly average. It was a delicate balance. If I scored too low on a test, my parents hired tutors. If I scored too high, they signed me up for enrichment programs. So I settled comfortably in the middle. 74 on chemistry. 68 in advanced mathematics. And 82 in English, high enough to avoid lectures, low enough to keep anyone from calling me gifted. The same principle applied to everything else. Basketball? I could shoot accurately, but I'd intentionally miss the final shot during practice. Cooking? I made edible food that somehow always looked like it had survived a small explosion. Music? I'd learned the guitar years ago, but whenever someone asked me to play, I'd forget half the chords. People thought talent disappeared if you ignored it. It didn't. It just got dusty. It took discipline, honestly. A different kind than the one my family valued, but discipline all the same. You had to remember which version of yourself you were supposed to be in every room. You had to time your mistakes so they looked natural instead of rehearsed. You had to smile the right amount when someone else won something, because too much enthusiasm looked suspicious and too little looked bitter. I had gotten very good at all of it. My family never noticed. That was the entire point. The Mercer family had only one unofficial rule. Second place was simply first place among losers. No one ever said it aloud. They didn't have to. The walls of our house said it for them. Every hallway displayed framed certificates. Every room contained trophies. Every shelf held awards polished so often they reflected your face. Visitors thought our home looked like a museum. I thought it looked like a warning. My father, Victor Mercer, built one of the country's fastest-growing cybersecurity companies before he was 35. Business magazines loved him. Investors worshipped him. Employees feared him. He woke up every morning at 5 o'clock, exercised, read 3 newspapers, answered emails, reviewed market reports, and somehow still made it to breakfast before everyone else. My mother, Dr. Helena Mercer, was one of the most respected neurosurgeons in the city. People literally trusted her with their brains. She worked impossible hours, yet somehow still found time to publish research papers. Then there were my siblings. Celeste. 23. Rhodes Scholarship finalist. National debate champion. Fluent in 4 languages. She once won an argument with a law professor while still in college. The professor later invited her to lecture his class. Damien. 26. Founded a software company during university, sold it 2 years later for enough money to buy a penthouse overlooking the river. He treated coding the way most people treated breathing. Natural. Effortless. Annoyingly impressive. And finally, there was me. Rowan Mercer. Professional underachiever. Master of strategic mediocrity. Family disappointment by design. At family gatherings, relatives introduced my siblings first, in order of most recent accomplishment, then paused before introducing me, as if trying to remember whether I'd done anything worth mentioning. Usually they settled on, "And this is Rowan, she's still figuring things out," said in the gentle, slightly worried tone people use for a plant that might not survive the winter. It was honestly exhausting. Breakfast every morning felt like attending a board meeting where I was the only employee on probation. Sunlight poured through floor-to-ceiling windows onto fresh fruit, homemade pastries, fresh coffee. Everything looked perfect. Everything always was. Victor folded his newspaper. "Celeste. Your interview with the Oxford Committee? They moved it to Thursday." "Excellent." Helena smiled. "You'll do wonderfully." Victor nodded toward Damien. "The Singapore investors? Meeting starts this afternoon. I've reviewed the presentation 3 times. Good." Satisfied, my father finally looked at me. "What are your plans today, Rowan?" "Here it comes." I shrugged. "Probably clean my room." Silence. Celeste slowly lowered her coffee cup. Damien blinked. Victor frowned. "For the entire day?" "I've got a lot of laundry." Helena exchanged a glance with Dad. "What about university applications?" "I'll get to them." "When?" "Soon." Victor sighed. "You've been saying soon for 6 months." "I've been very consistent." Nobody laughed. Tough crowd. After breakfast I escaped to the garage. Not because of the expensive cars, because nobody bothered me there. Hidden behind old shelves sat my actual hobby, a workbench covered with electronics, circuit boards, tiny screwdrivers, half-finished inventions, 3 laptops, a robotic arm, and a drone I had built from discarded parts over the past year. Nobody in my family knew. That was intentional. Every creation disappeared before anyone noticed. Sometimes I donated them anonymously to local schools. Sometimes I dismantled them for spare parts. Success attracted expectations. Expectations multiplied into pressure. Pressure destroyed peace. I'd learned that equation years ago. I was adjusting a tiny sensor when someone cleared their throat. I nearly dropped the screwdriver. Grandmother Margaret stood behind me. I hadn't heard the garage door open. At 78, she moved with alarming stealth. "You solder well," she observed. I quickly slid the project behind a toolbox. "I was just lying? Experimenting." She snorted, walked around the workbench, and picked up the drone. "You used brushless motors." I stared. "You know what those are?" "I married an engineer." "Right. Grandpa." Sometimes I forgot how brilliant he'd been. She placed the drone back on the table. "How long have you been pretending?" I froze. "I don't know what you mean." She just waited, patient. Finally I sighed. "About 6 years." I thought 5. "I wondered why your report cards became suspiciously identical." "You earned exactly 74% in mathematics 3 semesters in a row." "Really?" She folded her arms. "Why?" I checked that nobody else was listening. "Because I got tired. Every time I did something well, there was always another mountain. I thought of the piano competitions, win one, prepare for the next, the science fairs that went from regional to national to international. Every achievement simply unlocked another expectation. No finish line. No chance to breathe. I realized that if I'm ordinary, they leave me alone. Margaret studied me, then laughed, a full, genuine laugh that echoed through the garage. That's the most ridiculous survival strategy I've ever heard. It worked. It shouldn't have. But it did. She couldn't argue with results. That evening my parents hosted another dinner party, executives, doctors, professors, people who introduced themselves by listing their achievements before their names. I spent most of the evening quietly refilling glasses and avoiding conversations, which in my family was like trying to stay dry during a hurricane. "So, Rowan," a guest asked. "What university are you attending?" "Still deciding." "What are you studying?" "Haven't decided." Translation: Please stop talking to me. Instead, the questions multiplied, until Helena rescued me by changing the subject. "We're just worried," she said. Every head turned. Victor nodded. "Rowan has struggled to find motivation recently." Wonderful. Now I was the evening's discussion topic. One professor suggested a gap year. Another suggested internships. Someone recommended military service. I couldn't even make my bed consistently, at least, not publicly. Margaret watched without a word, amusement in her expression, as though she knew a joke no one else understood. The guests finally left shortly before 10. I was halfway upstairs when my father's voice stopped me. "Rowan." I turned. The entire family sat in the living room. Never a good sign. "Sit," Victor said. I obeyed. "We've been talking," Helena said. "We're concerned. You seem lost. You've stopped challenging yourself. You avoid responsibility. You have no clear goals." Each statement landed like another brick. Not because they were wrong, because they only saw the version of me I allowed them to see. Finally Victor took a slow breath. "We've decided to get you some help." My stomach tightened. "What kind of help?" Helena smiled reassuringly. "The positive kind." That answer made me even more nervous. Victor slid a folder toward me. Across the front was a photograph of a broadly smiling man in an expensive suit, white teeth, folded arms, confident posture. The words beneath his picture made my heart sink. "Travis Bloom, International Performance and Motivation Consultant. You hired a motivational coach?" "He comes highly recommended," Helena said. "He'll be living with us for a while." "Living? With us?" I stared, waiting for someone to laugh. Nobody did. "When does he arrive?" Victor smiled. "Tomorrow morning." Somewhere deep inside my mind, every survival plan I'd spent 6 years perfecting began to fall apart. I didn't sleep. Technically I lay in bed for 7 hours, eyes closed, breathing steady, while my brain imagined every possible version of a live-in motivational coach. By 5 in the morning I accepted my fate. If this Travis Bloom was really an internationally renowned consultant, there was no chance I'd fool him. Professionals noticed things. 6 years of work, gone. At precisely 8:30, the doorbell rang. The entire family gathered in the entrance hall, Dad straightening his tie, Mom smoothing her blouse, Celeste politely interested, Damien skeptical, Grandmother Margaret in her favorite chair with tea, wearing the expression of someone waiting for a circus to begin. Standing outside, once the door opened, was a man in a bright orange blazer, black turtleneck, white trousers, shiny loafers, round sunglasses, blonde hair styled with enough gel to survive a hurricane, and a smile so wide I wondered if his cheeks hurt. "Good morning. I am Travis Bloom." He strode inside uninvited, spun in a slow circle, and declared, "This home breathes success." "I mostly feel a draft," Margaret said, sipping her tea. He marched into the living room, closed his eyes, raised both arms. "Inhale confidence." Nobody moved. "Go on." Reluctantly, everyone inhaled. "Exhale self-doubt." Then he grabbed both my shoulders. "You must be Rowan. I've read your file. We're going to transform your life." I was actually hoping to keep the current one. He laughed loudly. "A sense of humor. That's a fantastic sign." My parents looked relieved, impressed, even. The man had been in our house for 3 minutes. The illusion lasted exactly 12 minutes. He tried to wheel his suitcase upstairs and it wouldn't budge. He'd forgotten to release the wheel lock, which Damien finally solved by pressing the small button. "I was testing everyone's observation skills," Travis said. Margaret coughed into her tea. "It appears we passed." Before lunch he insisted on making his own coffee, poured water into the bean container and beans into the water tank, put the filter in upside down, and produced smoke. "This machine resists innovation," he explained. By lunchtime, I had a working theory: maybe he was just nervous. Everyone made mistakes on their first day somewhere new, even self-proclaimed experts. I was almost willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. Then he cornered me with a notebook. "What are your dreams?" "I'd like to finish lunch." "Wonderful. Immediate goals." He scribbled. "What hobbies do you enjoy?" I read. "Mostly science fiction. I also like engineering." He looked confused. "As a metaphor?" "No. I build things." "Like confidence?" "Shelves." "Oh." He crossed something out. That afternoon, touring Dad's office, Travis picked up the Crystal Award that had been the very first Victor's company ever received, the one he always said meant more than the expensive ones, turned it over to examine it, and dropped it. It shattered across the hardwood floor. Nobody spoke. "Material possessions limit spiritual growth," Travis offered. "I've actually felt lighter already." Even Margaret winced. The silence at dinner could have frozen lava. Finally Travis tried to help. "This family has incredible potential. But your communication lacks emotional synchronization. You should all hug more." Damien lowered his fork. "We've known you for 10 hours. And already I care deeply." Margaret muttered, "Or common sense." The next morning began at exactly 5 o'clock with a whistle blast, dramatic orchestral music, and a booming voice in the hallway: "Winners don't snooze. Champions greet the sun." My bedroom door burst open. Travis stood there in a neon green tracksuit, tossing me running shoes. "Successful people beat the sun." 10 minutes later, freezing in the garden, we all watched Travis attempt to jog, trip over the hose 3 steps in, and land face first in the flower bed. "I give that landing an 8, Margaret said. "I've demonstrated resilience," Travis announced, standing up covered in dirt, one shoe missing. Progress isn't measured by perfection. Over the next 2 days, everything he touched became a small disaster: a dripping faucet made worse, Dad's office reorganized into chaos, a smoke detector that resigned itself to its fate, and every disaster somehow became a lesson. Locked out of the guest room, an exercise in creative problem-solving. Forgot where he parked, a mindfulness opportunity. Then came Thursday evening. Dad called everyone into the living room. Travis stood proudly by the fireplace holding a thick blue folder. I've concluded that Rowan's lack of motivation is far more severe than I first believed. He requires constant supervision. Beginning tomorrow, I'll personally oversee every hour of your daily routine. Breakfast. Study sessions. Exercise. Skill development. Career planning. Evening reflection. Every hour, every day. My 6-year strategy had survived impossible expectations, but it wasn't going to survive Travis Bloom. I had two choices: confess I'd been pretending all along, or beat the world's most confident incompetent at his own game. People assume the hardest part of pretending to be incompetent is acting. It isn't. The hardest part is remembering how competent you actually are. If I wanted Travis Bloom out of my house, I needed my family to realize he had no idea what he was doing. The only way to expose him was to stop looking incompetent myself. That terrified me. The next morning, I opened my door before the whistle could sound. "You can stop blowing the whistle," I said. "I like sleeping." He nodded, scribbling, responds positively to proactive awakening. That wasn't what happened. Not even close. Downstairs, the dining room had become a corporate seminar: whiteboard, sticky notes, a projector. Travis wrote "discipline equals destiny" and underlined it 3 times, then drew a circle, another circle, 2 triangles, and stared at them for 20 seconds before deciding one meant growth and the other advanced momentum. Margaret coughed suspiciously into her tea. In the backyard, unlocking hidden athletic excellence, Travis balanced on a small platform, nearly fell, and called it excellent recovery. When it was my turn, I didn't bother pretending to wobble. I balanced for 30 seconds. Then on one leg for 30 more. Dad, walking past with his coffee, stopped cold. "I didn't know you had good balance." "I skateboarded for years." "When?" "When everyone thought I was in my room playing video games." He looked genuinely surprised. I immediately regretted opening my mouth. The dishwasher wouldn't start. Travis pressed every button twice, declared the motor dead, and suggested calling a technician. I reached over, pushed the door until it clicked, and pressed start. It hummed to life. "How did you know?" Dad asked. "The latch wasn't fully closed." Travis laughed. "Excellent observation. I taught you to slow down and analyze." "You watched me." Mentorship. Margaret nearly choked on her toast. At 10 came study hour. I'd assumed this one would be easy to survive: pretend to be confused, let him teach me something I already understood twice over, nod along. I had done this exact routine with real tutors for years. It should have been simple. Travis arrived with a multivariable calculus textbook and called it algebra. He pointed at a partial differential equation, second-year university level, one I knew how to solve, and said, "Explain this." "You first." A coach doesn't provide answers. Teachers do. A coach inspires discovery. I've discovered you don't know the answer. He fumbled, called the symbols growth variables and the equation mathematical confidence. I laughed, just once, and turned the book around. It had been upside down the whole time. Dad, who'd walked in halfway through, watched the color drain from Travis's face. "You knew that?" he asked me. It was pretty obvious. A tiny wrinkle appeared between his eyebrows. That afternoon Dad asked me to look at a spreadsheet error on his laptop. "It references the wrong cell," I said, pointing. "You copied the formula 1 row too far." He fixed it, the sheet corrected instantly. That was fast. I use spreadsheets sometimes. For what? I organize movies. By genre. And they require nested formulas? I like being organized. He studied me, then smiled, not proud, not disappointed, just interested. I didn't know that about you. By evening the cracks were showing, in Travis, not me. His homemade chocolate soufflé had collapsed on one side and was steaming from somewhere it shouldn't. Margaret poked it with a spoon, it bounced. I've finally found a dessert suitable for construction work. Nora whispered to me, I think it has cement. After dinner I escaped to the garage, where my newest project, a compact robotic sorting arm, 3 months of work, nearly finished, sat waiting. I smiled for the first time all day. You really are good, Margaret said from the doorway. I jumped. Do you practice teleportation? You should make more noise. You should pay more attention. Fair point. She watched the arm sort tiny washers, eyes widening slightly. I thought the drone was impressive. This is better. I enjoy building things. I know. She leaned against the workbench. Your father would have loved doing this with you. He never asked. He assumed you weren't interested. I assumed he'd turn it into another competition. So both of you made assumptions. Neither of us spoke for a while. Then she smiled. I don't think Travis is your biggest problem anymore. I think your family is starting to meet the real Rowan. Through the garage window, Dad was laughing at something Mom had said, Celeste was helping Nora clear the table, Damien was arguing with the television. For years I'd hidden because I believed expectations were all my family would ever see. Now, by trying to expose Travis, I was accidentally exposing myself instead. And nobody seemed disappointed. That night Travis knocked on my door. I've noticed significant improvement. My methods are working. Tomorrow, we move to phase 2. There are phases? We discover your hidden talents. I felt every muscle tense, because hidden talents were exactly what I'd spent 6 years making sure nobody found. By 7:30 the next morning, the backyard looked like a low-budget game show, a chessboard, a toolbox, a sketchpad, a basketball, a keyboard, a puzzle cube, a laptop, even a stack of cooking ingredients, each arranged on its own folding table with a laminated sign taped to the front. The Talent Discovery Circuit. Travis announced, spreading his arms like he was unveiling a theme park. He had apparently been awake since 3:45, setting it all up in the dark. Margaret, arriving in her robe with a mug of tea, surveyed the tables like a general inspecting a battlefield she had no intention of losing. She'd been up since 6. I prefer winning. I stood at the edge of the patio and did the math. 8 stations. One coach who couldn't read a chessboard, dribble a basketball, or operate a coffee machine. This was either going to be the easiest morning of my life or the most dangerous one, and I honestly couldn't tell which yet. At chess, Travis opened by advancing his queen on move 1, unpredictability, and 7 moves later managed to corner his own bishop, rook, and queen against each other. Checkmate, I said. You play chess? Dad asked. Sometimes. Celeste narrowed her eyes. You beat me when we were kids. I got lucky. 6 times. At basketball, Travis dribbled the ball off his own foot into the rose bushes and called it demonstrating what not to do. I sank 3 shots in a row, nothing spectacular, just clean. You said you hated basketball, Dad said. I hate watching it. That isn't the same thing. Damien grinned. I've been trying to tell you that for years. At the cooking station, Nora watched me chop vegetables evenly and quickly. You've done this before. A few times. You've been sneaking into my kitchen after midnight for years. Mom stared. That soup for the neighbors when Mrs. Collins was ill, that was you? I left it anonymously. I knew it, Nora said. Nobody else seasons soup properly. I found the cutting board very fascinating. At the bicycle station, I fixed a slipped chain in 22 seconds. Damien whistled. I've been fighting with that bike for 2 days. Dad looked toward the garage, then back at me. Is there anything else you've forgotten to mention? Maybe. By evening I'd solved a logic puzzle, fixed the Wi-Fi router in under a minute, and identified 3 birds by their calls because I'd secretly read field guides for years. Mom looked bewildered. So did I. My carefully constructed image was collapsing, brick by brick. That evening Travis called everyone together to announce Rowan's transformation ahead of schedule. Dad looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before, not disappointment, not concern. Curiosity. I wish you'd told us. I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. Helena said softly, you don't have to explain tonight. But we'd like to know you better. Not improve me. Not compare me. Just know me. Later, in the garage, Dad found me watching the sorting arm work. He circled the workbench, taking in the drone, the labeled shelves of components. You built all of this? When? Over the last few years. You taught yourself? Mostly. Books, videos, trial and error. He smiled faintly. You sound like me when I was your age. I doubt that. I built my first computer from scrap parts in my parents' garage. I blinked. You never told me that. You never asked. The words hung between us, exactly the answer I'd given Damien that morning. We've both been making assumptions, he said. Then, of the arm, would you show me how it works? I braced for the speech about competitions and patents. Instead he just wanted to watch. Something inside me shifted, just a little. As he headed inside, I overheard him with Mom in the hallway. I think another week should do it, Travis was saying. Then Rowan will be fully transformed. I almost laughed. The real transformation wasn't happening to me. It was happening to my family. Saturday morning, Celeste knocked on my door with 2 mugs of coffee. You've been hiding, she said, sitting down. I was captain of the debate team. I notice patterns. The robot in the garage says otherwise. Dad showed me. I sighed. I thought if everyone believed I wasn't good at anything, they'd stop expecting things. I understand, she said, and told me about winning her first national debate title, then the second, then being asked why she hadn't started writing a book. Success moves the finish line. I got tired too. I just reacted differently, I kept going. I didn't know I was allowed to stop. Do you regret it? I asked. Any of it, the championships, the languages, all of it? She thought about it longer than I expected. No. I like being good at things. I just wish somebody had once asked if I was tired instead of asking what was next. She wrapped both hands around her mug. I used to watch you fumble things on purpose and think you were being lazy. I'm sorry. I think I was just jealous that you'd found an exit and I hadn't. It's not exactly an exit. It's more like hiding in a very well-organized closet. She laughed, a real laugh, not the polished, competition-ready one. Still, You found a door. I didn't even know there was one. For the first time in years, my sister didn't feel like someone I had to compete with. She felt like my sister. Downstairs, a banner stretched across the dining room, Rowan's Success Week. Each family member would mentor me in their area of expertise. I'm beginning to think your plans are personal attacks, I muttered to Travis. Dad's session turned into me fixing a missing semicolon in his company's code. You've programmed before. A little. How little? Enough. He laughed. I spent thousands on coding camps for Damien. I know. You learned from free videos? And documentation. I don't know whether to be impressed or offended. Why offended? You could have helped me debug things years ago. You never asked. You've used that line twice now. Maybe people should ask more questions. Mom's session, organizing medical journals by year, specialty, and author, with a spreadsheet, left her staring at the shelves. This would have taken me all weekend. Then, unprompted, would you like to visit the hospital sometime? You've always seemed curious how things work. Not because she expected me to become a doctor. Just because she thought I'd enjoy it. That was new. Meanwhile, every small success of mine somehow became Travis's achievement. I've been encouraging analytical thinking, he told Dad. Confidence unlocks hidden efficiency, he told Mom. Mindset changes taste, he told Nora about lunch. Does he hear himself? I whispered to Damien. No. I don't think he does. That afternoon Damien cornered me in the garage holding one of my drones. You've been hiding for years. Why didn't you tell me? You were busy. I would have made time. I didn't want another mentor. I just wanted a brother. The words escaped before I could stop them. He stared, then laughed. I spent years thinking you didn't like me. What? You never wanted to hang out. I thought you were too busy. I thought you wanted to be left alone. I did. Not all the time. We're really bad at talking. The whole family is. He held up the drone. Teach me? For real? For real. The lesson lasted 2 hours and gathered the whole family, Dad crashing the practice drone into a cardboard box, Mom laughing until she had to sit down, Celeste insisting she could fly better, she couldn't, Damien steering into the fence. Nobody cared who was best. Travis wandered in, declared his work flourishing. Margaret, arriving with lemonade, said, "Remarkable." "Thank you," Travis said. "I wasn't talking about you." That evening Dad cancelled a business meeting, not postponed, cancelled, for movie night. The whole family, together, no talk of work or grades. It felt normal. Comfortable. Like something we'd been missing without realizing it. Later I overheard Mom and Dad in his office. "I've never seen Rowan this happy," Mom said. Travis chuckled about proper guidance. Dad, quietly, "I think we simply started paying attention." Then Mom, "We've spent years asking Rowan what she wanted to achieve. I don't think we ever asked what she enjoyed." I stepped away from the door before anyone noticed me. For the first time, they were asking the right questions. The next morning, Travis announced he'd volunteered me to give the opening speech at the Mercer Foundation Charity Gala. The following evening, in front of 500 of the city's business leaders, doctors, professors, and philanthropists. I am absolutely not giving that speech. I heard potential. I said no. Fear is temporary. So is oxygen if I pass out. I'll catch her if she faints, Margaret offered. Not because I'm worried. I don't want her denting the floor. The gala committee had already printed the program. Opening remarks, Rowan Mercer. You actually did it. I believe in commitment. I believe in asking permission. Confidence rarely asks permission. I hate everything about that sentence. Rehearsal turned the living room into a theater. Project your voice. I don't want to. Smile. I don't feel like smiling. Eventually I slammed both hands on the podium and shouted, "Good afternoon," loud enough that Mom nearly dropped her notebook and Margaret applauded once. Now they'd definitely heard her. Then Dad stood up. "Stop trying to sound impressive," he said, and told me about his first investor presentation, when he'd tried to sound important and it had flopped, until the next one, when he simply explained why he cared, and they invested. He handed me a blank notebook. Don't write a speech. Write the truth. The truth was complicated. I'd spent years pretending to be someone I wasn't. I loved building things. I was terrified of expectations. I'd pushed my own family away. How was I supposed to fit that into 5 minutes? I tried writing 3 different drafts. The first sounded like a resume. The second sounded like an apology. The third sounded like something Travis would say, all sunshine and no substance, and I deleted it so fast I nearly threw the notebook across the room. Nothing felt honest enough, and nothing felt safe enough either, and I was starting to understand that those two things might not be able to coexist in the same speech. That evening in the garage, Mom found me at the workbench. You always come here when you're thinking. I've started paying attention. She picked up one of my notebooks, full of sketches and blueprints. They're pieces of you, she said. Then, quietly, were you really that unhappy? Sometimes. I wish we'd known. I never told you. You shouldn't have had to. As parents, we're supposed to notice. I didn't exactly make it easy. No. But that was probably a sign too. She hugged me, not because I'd won anything. Just because. I forgot how to breathe for a second. Then I hugged her back. By 6:30 the next evening, the ballroom glittered beneath crystal chandeliers, round tables, white roses, silver candles, a string quartet, company founders, university presidents, judges, scientists. I wanted to disappear. Dad adjusted my collar. You'll be fine. I've heard that's scientifically impossible. Mom squeezed my shoulder. Just be yourself. Backstage, Margaret adjusted my collar too. You look terrified. I am. Good. It means you care. She nodded toward the crowd. Those people out there are all pretending too. Some pretend they're never afraid. Some pretend they know everything. Most of them are making it up as they go. I laughed. That's oddly comforting. I thought so. Please welcome Miss Rowan Mercer. The curtains opened. 500 faces turned toward me. My mind went completely blank. I gripped the podium's edges until my knuckles turned white. Behind me, Travis gave an enthusiastic thumbs up. I resisted the urge to throw the microphone at him. Instead, I remembered what Dad had said. Tell the truth. Good evening. My name is Rowan Mercer. You've probably heard a lot about my family tonight. My father built a successful company. My mother saves lives. My sister wins debates. My brother starts businesses. And then, I smiled nervously. There's me. Warm laughter. My shoulders relaxed. When I was younger, I believed every achievement came with another expectation. If you won one competition, people asked which one you'd win next. So eventually I decided the easiest way to escape expectations was to stop looking talented. I became very good at looking average. I intentionally made mistakes. I scored lower on tests. I hid the things I actually enjoyed. Looking back, it was probably the least efficient solution anyone has ever invented. Laughter filled the ballroom. Even I laughed. But here's the strange part. I thought hiding my abilities would make life simpler. It didn't. It just meant nobody really knew me. I wasn't hiding because I was lazy, or because I lacked ambition. I was hiding because I thought love and expectations always came together. I was wrong. Mom's eyes were already shining. Dad looked down, then back up at me. The past week has been unexpected. I've accidentally shown my family parts of myself I spent years hiding. I build robots. I write software. I cook. I fix things. I even like spreadsheets. Laughter. I'm working on that last one. I've also discovered something. The people who love you can't know who you really are if you spend all your time pretending to be someone else. Silence, the kind that meant people were really listening. I don't know exactly what I want to do with my life yet. I might become an engineer. I might invent things. I might change my mind 5 more times. And for the first time, I'm okay with that. So tonight, I hope the students receiving scholarships remember something I forgot for a long time. You don't have to become someone else to deserve support. You don't have to hide who you are to feel accepted. And success means very little if it costs you yourself. Thank you. For one heartbeat, nothing happened. Then an elderly professor in the front row stood and applauded. A second person stood. Then another, and another, until the entire ballroom was on its feet. A standing ovation. For me. Backstage, my knees finally felt weak. I survived. More than survived, Dad said, strangely emotional. I've given presentations to thousands of people. I've never received a standing ovation. He pulled me into a real hug. I'm proud of you. I'd imagined hearing those words for years, always after winning something. Instead, they came after I admitted I'd been afraid. Mom hugged us both, laughing through watery eyes. You made everyone cry. Celeste wrapped an arm around me. I spent 3 years studying public speaking, and you just beat me. Damien grinned. I vote we make Rowan give every speech from now on. Motion denied. Across the room, Travis accepted congratulations for his remarkable coaching. Of course he did. Does that bother you? Margaret asked, watching my face. A week ago, it would have. Now, not as much, because the people who mattered knew the truth. Or at least most of it. Guests I'd never met approached between courses, a retired engineer curious about my robotics, a professor inviting me to his research lab, a young entrepreneur wanting to hear about the drone. None of them asked for my grades. They cared because I was genuinely interested in what I talked about. Unexpectedly refreshing. Near the end of the evening, Dad took the stage. When I founded my company, I believed success came from setting the highest possible standards. I still believe standards matter. But recently I've been reminded of something more important. You can spend so much time encouraging achievement that you forget to encourage honesty. I almost made that mistake with my youngest daughter. I love all my children, but love should never feel conditional. I intend to do better. People applauded again, this time not for success, but for humility. The ride home was quiet. Not uncomfortable. Peaceful. Nobody reached for their phones. Movie night tomorrow? Dad asked, catching my eye in the mirror. Only if you promise not to analyze the hacking scenes. Damien groaned. I make no promises. For the first time in years, the car didn't feel like transportation. It felt like family. As we pulled into the driveway, Travis was still talking. I'd be happy to extend my stay another month. The smile disappeared from Dad's face. I think we'll discuss that tomorrow, he said, in the same careful tone he used during difficult negotiations. Margaret caught my eye and whispered, I believe our motivational guest is about to receive some motivation of his own. Becoming the family's golden child happened quietly, no ceremony, no certificate. One day I was the girl everyone worried about. The next, I was the girl everyone kept asking things. Rowan, can you look at this? What do you think? Do you want to come with me? For 6 years I had tried to disappear. Now everyone kept finding me. Nora noticed first, sliding me a plate of pancakes with extra blueberries. I've worked here 12 years. I know everyone's preferences. Although yours were harder, because you spent years pretending you didn't have any. Why won't you tell them? Because I think you deserve the chance to tell them yourself. It was strange, realizing how many people had quietly known pieces of the truth all along, Nora with her clean midnight pans, Margaret with her suspiciously identical report cards, Celeste with her patterns. I had spent 6 years assuming I was invisible. I hadn't been invisible. I had just been unquestioned, which turned out to be a very different thing. Travis, meanwhile, was living with dangerous new confidence, updating his transformation journal daily. I once caught him writing subject has reached advanced self-discovery. Subject? Professional terminology. I'm a person. Then right person. Excellent feedback. Despite everything, he'd accidentally helped, which was the annoying part. If he'd been completely useless, firing him would have been easy. But without realizing it, he'd forced situations where I couldn't hide anymore, the speech, the talent tests, the family discussions. Now I had to figure out what to do with all of it. Dad started knocking before entering the garage, a small thing, but I noticed. One afternoon he told me he'd started his company because he was afraid nobody would hire him, that he thought success would stop people questioning whether he belonged. Did it work? Sometimes. Other times I just found new things to worry about. Sounds familiar. Why didn't you tell us? He finally asked. Because I knew you'd see potential, start talking about universities and careers. I didn't want my hobbies to become another responsibility. He nodded slowly. I understand. Because I did the same thing to you. At dinner that night, no business talk, no achievements, just dinner, until Damien ruined the peace by listing everything I'd secretly turned out to be good at. You're terrible at accepting compliments, Celeste laughed. I practiced avoiding them. Then Mom asked, simply, what do you actually want to do? Nobody had asked before. I don't know, I admitted, and nobody looked disappointed. That's okay, Dad said. I think you should have a direction. But the road can change. A few months ago, that answer would have sounded impossible. Now it sounded reasonable. Travis's next challenge was a leadership exercise, helping a group of bribed, cookie-motivated neighborhood kids build a birdhouse from upside-down instructions, wrong measurements, and missing screws. Chaos ensued, one kid holding a hammer backward, another attaching the roof to the floor. Excellent teamwork, Travis said. They're building a wooden disaster. Innovation. I almost argued, then noticed the kids weren't worried about perfect, they were enjoying making something. I knelt beside them. Let's start over. An hour later, the birdhouse wasn't professional, but it stood, and the kids cheered. You have inspired them, Travis said, looking oddly emotional. They inspired themselves. That's actually better. That night I found him sitting alone, no music, no speeches. You seem quiet. I am capable of quiet. After a moment he said, when I started this job, I thought my purpose was to make people successful. Now I think maybe it's to help people notice what they already have. Did you just say something useful? I say useful things constantly. Rarely. Fair. For years, honesty had felt harder than pretending. Pretending had rules, honesty meant people saw the real me, and I had no idea what they'd think of it. But a week later, my family had started acting genuinely normal. Dad still worked too much, but took breaks. Mom called home more. Damien still talked business constantly, but asked about my projects too. Celeste stopped turning every conversation into a debate. Even Margaret stopped pretending not to care, which for her was a major emotional confession. She found me one Saturday working in the garage with the door wide open, not hiding, not covering anything when she entered. Interesting, she said. You left the door open. I glanced back at the sunlight pouring in. I guess I did. Progress. The project on my desk was something I'd been thinking about for months, a small educational robotics kit, something students could build themselves without expensive equipment, something I would have loved at their age. I wasn't building it to win anything. I loved learning. I loved creating. I just hated feeling like every achievement belonged to someone else. Dad walked in one afternoon and asked what I wanted after graduation. The old me would have deflected. I want to study engineering. Okay. That was it. No 10-year plan, no list of universities. I laughed. That's all? What did you expect? I don't know. Maybe that's the problem. The applications that followed were strange because they were honest. I wrote about what I cared about, building things, solving problems, creating tools that helped people. When interviews asked about failures, I didn't pretend I'd never had any. I had hidden. I had been afraid. I had made mistakes. But I learned. And apparently, that mattered. A few months later, acceptance letters arrived. The family gathered around the kitchen table, except this time, everyone was waiting for me, not the achievement. Where are you going? Damien asked. I haven't decided. Everyone froze. Celeste laughed. You're serious. You actually have choices. Margaret nodded proudly. She's making decisions instead of avoiding them. That's a little insulting. It's also accurate. I eventually chose a university with a strong engineering program, not the most famous, not the most prestigious, but the one where I felt like I belonged. I used to think choosing something because it felt right was irresponsible. Now I understood it was probably the most responsible thing I could do. The day before I left for university, Travis showed up in a plain jacket, no sunglasses, no neon, no motivational speaker energy. You're dressed normally. I've been experimenting. With humility. How's that going? Terribly. Good. I expected that. In the living room, He admitted to the whole family that he wasn't actually an internationally recognized performance expert. Nobody reacted. Nobody was surprised. "You couldn't operate a coffee machine," Damien said. "A difficult machine. One button. An intimidating button." Everyone laughed, and Travis, smiling, said, "But I did learn something. People don't need someone to tell them who they can become. Sometimes they just need someone to notice who they already are." The room went quiet, because that was actually meaningful. He handed me a notebook. The first page read, "Don't forget to enjoy becoming yourself." "Did you write this? By yourself? Without copying a quote from somewhere?" "I have developed." "Congratulations." That evening we had one final family dinner. Dad raised his glass. "To Rowan. To figuring things out." I looked around the table, not my audience, not my judges. My family. "To not knowing everything," I said. Margaret nodded. "Finally." A Mercer admitting uncertainty. Everyone laughed. Years later, people would ask me about that strange summer, the speech, the inventions, the unusual motivational coach who accidentally changed our family. They always wanted the impressive parts. The truth was simpler. I didn't become successful because I stopped being afraid. I became successful because I stopped letting fear decide who I was. I didn't become the golden child, and I didn't stay the family disappointment. I became myself. And honestly, that was the first thing I ever did that truly felt like an achievement. For years, I believed the only way to escape expectations was to make people think I was ordinary. But the truth was never that I wasn't capable. The truth was that I was afraid of what would happen if people saw the real me. Sometimes we hide parts of ourselves because we think it will make life easier. But the things we hide are often the very things that make us special. I didn't become happier because I became the smartest person in the room. I became happier because I stopped pretending I belonged anywhere else. Family isn't supposed to be a place where you have to earn your value. It's supposed to be the place where you can be yourself. I think about the girl who spent 6 years engineering 74% scores more often than I probably should. Not with embarrassment, exactly. More like the way you'd look back at a younger sibling who was doing the best she could with the tools she had. She wasn't lazy. She wasn't broken. She was just scared, and she solved the problem the only way she knew how, badly, but completely on her own terms. I don't think I'd tell her to stop hiding sooner, even if I could. I think I'd just sit with her in that garage a while, and tell her that eventually, someone was going to open the door, and it wouldn't be the disaster she was bracing for. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to impress everyone. And you don't need to become someone else to be important. The person you are right now might already be someone worth discovering. If Rowan's story reminded you of anyone, a sibling, a friend, or maybe even yourself, that quiet feeling of hiding just to feel safe is more common than most families ever realize. Sometimes the people who seem the most average are simply the ones working the hardest to stay unnoticed. Thank you for reading this story all the way through. If it meant something to you, share it with someone who needs the reminder, and stick around for more stories like this one.